Hello?
Yep, I'm just getting things started.
What's up, Bobby?
All right, all right. Thank you for pulling up, Kevin.
Oh, yeah.
We'll be getting started very, very soon. We'll just give everybody a few more minutes to get in. I think I got my slides sharing. Give me a thumbs up, Kevin, if you can see my slides. All right. Thank you, sir. While you're here, and especially if you're here early, introduce yourself in the chat room. Let me know what school you're at, what year you in, and let's see, what programming language you like to write in. Wow, only Mike has something to say in the chat room. I mean, oh, here we go. Here we go. Here we go. All right, all right. Well, thank you all for dropping in this career lab session with me, your coach. Today, I will be the host for today's event. Thank you for chiming in the chat room. And in general, I hope we have a really good time this afternoon because we're going to be talking about building and updating a showcase project. So I had to slide up and then it went back away. So let me bring that back up again so we can kick this thing started. All right, so we will be having a conversation about your showcase projects and where you're going to be hopefully hosting them at. I'll be giving you some perspectives from my view as an engineer and technologist that take a look at a few pages throughout my career, and ultimately just make this a conversation. There will be a chance for us to have open questions at the end. I am looking for volunteers or two, so the chat room is definitely a space that I want you to use. Let everybody know how you're feeling, and definitely want to make sure that we all are on the same page. So if anybody has a question about something that I don't answer directly, let's go ahead and use that chat room to drop in some links or something like that. All right. So I've seen it work very well in our last session. So I definitely want us to take advantage of it again. Let me start looking at the camera. I'm looking down at the screen and not looking at the camera. But anyways, we're going to have this conversation, and let me see where my pointer is so we can kick this off. So my name is Bobby Dorless, and I'm one of the career coaches here at CodePath. And CodePath is a place where I've been able to bring some of my skill sets that I've developed over the years, because I've been in the field of engineering for at least 20 years now, since way back in 2002. I'm not sure if this is the first time we've met. If it is, welcome, welcome. If this is the second or third time, or how many every time we've met each other, you already know how I am. So thank you for coming through. My skill sets in engineering and what I really bring to the table in terms of my preferred programming language that some of you posted in there is Python. I also really enjoy writing Go, but my most proficient skill set is in Bash because I'm a systems engineer. But as a systems engineer, I also write code. So I obviously am a software engineer because I used to manage large scale systems at a real cool social media company. We can talk about it later. But that's a little bit about me. And if you want to come and hang out, get on my calendar so we can talk some more about what I've done and what I've worked on in the past. I do run an office hours, not this Friday, but next Friday, where you can just come by and hang out. And we can chat up about it some more. But in general, I'm hoping that at least if this is the first time we met, you can see some of the skill sets that I bring to the table. And I want you to always remember talking about tech is really going to be foundational to you talking about the project, which we'll get into. Now, the next thing I want to show is some of the services that we offer here at the Career Center. This is one of those where you come and hang out with me. Catalina also runs a session or two. Kelsey does also. And we basically are offering kind of, one-on-one services in terms of the resources that we have on our career site, but also things like the Career Lab, which we're having today, networking events, job fairs, and so on and so forth. So if you haven't, definitely check out the Go Career Center link that's mentioned there at the top. But I want to bring this up again because I want to make sure that everybody's ready, is that I'm looking for volunteers, NA volunteers later on in the conversation. And I just throw this slide up because I just want to remind you all that practicing is what's going to make you proficient at whatever you're working on. So if you want to practice, this is one of those spaces where nobody's judging you, nobody's making, any type of unexpected feeling other than like, I'm happy that somebody's doing it and I want to feel brave enough to do it myself. So definitely volunteer as we go through some of these Career Lab exercises. But I know today's conversation, some of you all are just more or less thinking that, Bobby's going to tell me the perfect project that I need to create. And I just want to let you know that there is no perfect project or perfect showcase project. What I'm going to talk about is some of the things that I observe as somebody that reviews a lot of GitHub pages per se, or a lot of resumes and LinkedIn pages, and really noticing certain things on certain project pages that really catches my eyes and interest as a technologist. And I know that there's going to be a lot of people building projects similar to you, or there are a lot of people in the industry as of to date. Everybody's, pursuing this field, is finding ways to make your project stand out and something that's unique to when I observe it, that it catches my eye and interest into understanding what you're working on. I know that some of you may have met with me before, and I've said this statement before, that talking about tech and talking about the technology is more important to me when I'm reviewing a project. And I'll tell you why when we start to go through some example project pages that we're going to be talking about today. But I hope you don't think that I'm going to tell you the best project. I don't know. It's you having an understanding of why showcase projects matter to you in terms of showcasing your skill sets and having something that when it's the first time that I meet you, really showcases who you are. That's what I really want you to think about when you're thinking about this showcase project, because you're going to be working on projects all the time. But this project is something that's showing your technical skills. Like I've seen some of you have some proficiency in Java and Python as your programming language that you mentioned in the chat room, is showcasing these skills. Is this the project that you have on your main page, or the one that you talk about the most on your resume? And just understanding that showcasing those skill sets are things that I'm looking for. Also, projects themselves are an opportunity to showcase your ability to be a problem solver, right? I know that you all start off with all your code being buggy. I mean, if I go write code right now, I guarantee you I'm gonna have some type of syntax error and everything is gonna be buggy. But that skill set of working through those type of projects and actually having something for you to show, I know as an engineer that you had to develop that skill set as a problem solver. And also, it really enlightens on how passionate you are about this field of engineering if you're doing these and showcasing these projects. And one thing that I just always want to remind you, that posting projects and having the world have access to what really passionate to you is that it really shows you as an independent developer, engineer, or a collaborator working on other teams, which is something that I really like to see when I'm looking at candidates' projects or whatever they're showcasing, is that you have the ability to work individually in terms of the code base, who's actually committing the code. Oh, this, yeah, he or she is the only person committing code, right? That's independently. Or I look at the GitHub repo and I see a few people committing code. All right, they're a contributor. They're actually working in a collective group set and making contributions. All of these are things that I look at, or some of these are the things that I look at when I'm evaluating projects. But that's why projects themselves really do matter. Now, how do you choose your project? Like, how do you say, this is the project that I'm going to showcase on my resume? So when, I have my school, I have the technologies that I'm interested in. I might actually have some employment that I've had before, or what is the project that I want to highlight on this resume so that they can see that I'm proficient at whatever coding language or skill set that I'm describing. Just make sure that it aligns with what you're interested in, right? Is that project that you're going to showcase out there. If you're a front-end developer working in React, Angular, JS, and just JavaScript as a whole, that project that you're showcasing aligns well, and that's the one that you want to make sure is showcased, not just in your resume, but also on your LinkedIn, right? But not just that project is what's of your interest, but it showcases your skill sets. Now, when I say showcasing the project in a light that it's like, yo, I'm interested in it, that means that I'm putting more work into displaying what it looks like, making sure that I kind of convey the design strategies or even ways that I document it. These ways of showcasing your passion for a project, really something that I look at when I go to somebody's page. And let's say that in this example, you go to their repository, you check out a directory, you look at this project, and it's not really structured well. I sometimes wonder if they've really had challenges with managing code in an unstructured file system, and they've spent time to structure it in a right way. In the sense of, hey, there may be a source directory, there may be a test directory, there's a README file there, there may be even a build file. And these things, when I see them, I know that the engineers take an extra time to make sure that this code base itself reflects how passionate they are about writing code, rather than a repository that just has one file. And it might not even be called main. It might be called something else, no documentation. I was like, okay, they got the project done. But being able to showcase how passionate you are and things like that aligns very well with a showcase project. All right. Now, when we move on to actually just decide or understanding why we are making or choosing a showcase project and how we choose one, let's just talk about and continue on talking about how you make that project shine. I was talking about directory structures. I was talking about a README file. I was talking about emphasizing how making something eye-catchy is something that me as an engineer, I'm looking for too. Do you know how much I actually read code? I mean, imagine you as a developer, all day you're just looking at code, line by line by line, right? Sometimes if you are a front-end engineer, you'll have some more graphics and you'll see that. But if you're a back-end engineer, you're just reading code. Imagine you go to a page or repository that has some artwork in there, or it just pops up and it looks really structured well. That's an eye-catching thing. And I'm like, oh, I maybe even want to research and read more into this project just because of that. So just think about, just the user experience in that sense of when we come to your landing page, wherever your code base is stored, and how we want to, or how you want us to engage with your showcase project. So hopefully that kind of gives you some ideas of what that eye-catchiness looking data structure, or not data structure, file structure looks like. But where do you share these projects at? Obviously, the number one, and if you're not on GitHub, I don't know if anybody hasn't told you yet, but that's where all the software engineers hang out. So definitely come and hang out with us in GitHub. And the reason why I bring this up is that I personally, as a technologist, when I look at a resume, the first thing I look for is a GitHub page. Oh, you got all this stuff written down? That's cool. I'll get to that. But let me go look at the GitHub page. So that's the place where we hang out as engineers, in a perfect breeding ground for you to develop a way that you can showcase your showcase project. Right. Another place is making sure that GitHub and LinkedIn is updated with where can I find your code at. And LinkedIn, if you're not on LinkedIn, is the best place for you to be connected to somebody like me. So if you want to get connected to me, find me on LinkedIn. But opportunities will find their ways on LinkedIn, because it's a way for us to network on a professional level. So definitely get on LinkedIn if nobody hasn't told you yet. But what I also want to do is not just talk about what a showcase project could look like, but I want to pull up somebody's GitHub page for us to actually take a look. Because this is one of our CodePath's tech fellows, and has been involved in CodePath for a few semesters. And I've met with a number of times, and I've never had a chance to really give him a big shout out about his GitHub page. Because there are certain things on his page that you may be doing. Congratulations to you. And there's certain things that you may not be doing, but I'm going to describe the things that catch my eye, and also how it's structured in a way for me to know a few things about him. So Kabar is a friend, or I apologize, is an iOS developer. And I can see this by just how he describes who he is in the beginning of his page there, right? And I'm going to actually not just pull up his page here, but I'm going to pull it up. If I can, I'm just going to pull up his actual tab here. Let me see if I can do it, Bobby. Nope. Yep, there we go. I did it. I did the command control tab thingy. I'm so proud of myself. All right. So actually, we're going to take a look at his GitHub page right from GitHub's website. And one thing that I want you just to see as I scroll is how eye-catchy his GitHub page is. The first thing that caught my eyes is what language he's learning and languages he's most proficient at that he's calling out here, right? As I'm scrolling down, the next thing that I look at when I go to people's page is I get all the way down to this chart right here. This tells me if you are developing and publishing code in some type of repository, and definitely following the standard flow of checking out code, working on my local branch, merging it, and then doing a pull request to go back, or merging it back into your remote main branch, right? This right here is something that I am very much impressed with when I go to someone's page, because green for me means you're following those steps, right? And that's not even his showcase project, because I just gave you a little bit more gems and jewels than you know what was agreed upon in our conversation. But as a technologist, this is one of the cool things that I like to see. So it's all right if you don't have your projects there, but remember, when I go and look for your showcase project, I'm also seeing how much contributions you're doing throughout the time. So if you put in the work, we can definitely see it. All right, so I'm going to scroll back up to the top, because there was something really cool that he did at his GitHub page, is to call out his showcase project. He's describing it as, hey, I'm working on this iOS project right now. And I'm like, oh, guess what? I don't have to go look for it. I don't have to go make any references to it. I just go to this page, and it is a README file. So definitely he's using some Markdown and understand how to structure and add links and things like that. That's really cool. But let me just go click on his project here, and let me go see how it's structured. You remember how we was talking about structure in the file system? All right. I'm looking in here and I'm like, at least there's definitely a README file, number one. I scroll down, look at the README file and the way that it is structured. Look, there's bolded links here. That means there are some Markdown commands that he had to include to make it structured this way. I'm scrolling down. Oh, there's a demo. And remember, I'm just looking at it from my point of view, not diving into the code base yet, right? And just seeing that, hey, I got just about all the details that I want about this project, how to even clone and contribute, right? How to contact him as a developer. But the cool thing that I just want to also mention, this is the other thing that I want to make sure you're aware of. is that when I'm looking at these pages, I'm making sure I'm looking for what software system, like any requirements, any way to describe what is being used to build this application or the showcase project. And the way that he has it structured, and I'll share it in the chat room if you all are not sharing it already, but it definitely just gives me a good way or a good example for you all to see what I'm, as an engineer, am looking for in a showcase project. Now, if we scroll back up to the top, I'm not an iOS developer, not an Android developer, mostly in the back end. But when I have a directory structure that I have to manage and or observe or query or look through, I'm more or less looking at how the directories are labeled, described here. I kind of can know where and the specific directory structure that there's like some tests going on here. Looks like there's some lock file here. Don't know what it is. But let's click on this right here and see this. All right. It looks like the project itself has some structure in the file system structure. If this was a Python file system or a project more specifically, I would definitely have some more opinions. But from my opinion, from the outside, and I don't know iOS as well, it's structured well enough for me to potentially figure it out if I had to. But the key thing that I want to make sure I mention here is that overall, if you're thinking about creating and having a showcase project, make sure that you have it in a way that you're presenting it to reflect you and how passionate you are in this, in this field of engineering. All right. So let me do a shift tab. Does it go back? No, let's go shift tab. Yep, it did work. So shift control tab went back a tab in Chrome. Oh, all right, all right. So this is an opportunity for volunteers. After we've seen and actually kind of talked about different projects, not different projects, but ways to choose your projects, the reason why you want to find a passionate or showcase project and how to present it. I was wondering if anybody, look, Kevin hasn't even let me finish ask the question yet. But
Yeah.
I want to, open up this opportunity for a volunteer to either talk about a project that they have that they're really passionate about, provide a GitHub link that we can pull it up and take a look at and give you some, quick off the cuff feedback on, but more or less having a conversation about their showcase project because we're always practicing. And now, is that you, Kevin?
Yeah. Shoot, go click on the link.
All right. So let me go check the chat room real quick. All right. Copy. And we're back in the slides here. This is you right here?
That's me.
Awesome. So go ahead and talk to me about what we got here, Kevin.
So this is the profile page that I've been kind of working on to put all my info on one page. I've kind of got some feedback from recruiters and friends and people that I trust. So that's always nice. And yeah, I've used, so in this project, I kind of wanted to showcase that I can use GitHub Actions to do continuous development and those kind of automated pipelines whenever I deploy or commit new code. I wanted that to be pretty active. I wanted high availability, so I'm using GitHub Pages to host it. And then I'm having my DNS just point, I just have a CNAME pointing to this domain as I'm, it's just the centralized place for my stuff. And I'm actually using GitHub Pages because you're able to host static websites for free. Totally recommend for everybody here to like play around with GitHub Pages to get like a free website going to showcase their stuff. But yeah, that's kind of what I have. And then I have just like my contact information in that first block. I have live web applications in that second one. I have other fun code that I've been working on, like my open source contributions, and kind of like those projects that don't really have a home yet, that I'm kind of like, I don't know if I can develop this into a web application, but I can probably figure out a way to package and distribute that in a way. And then I have some blog posts, like why health inspectors make great software engineers, or my Raspberry Pi projects.
Sure, for sure.
So
Let me give you some feedback really quick because I want to highlight something that you did. Is when you were talking about your project, you started to get really into the techie stuff. You had me like right here. I was like, oh my gosh. He was like, oh, he used GitHub this. I was like, oh, and he used DNS. I was like, yes, yes, yes. And I was like, whenever you're talking about your project, especially to somebody like me, I'm always listening for the tech part of it. Like, what makes this project special to you? What new technology did you touch? And you talked about a C name with DNS. You learned something by making this page pull up with that name and it redirects back to GitHub some form. You learned something in that process. And talking
right.
about tech gives me that insights. And it's just simple words. You said high availability. You said load balance. Like those are, my ears are ringing when you're talking about that. So keep this as an example, everyone else in the audience, that when you're talking about your project, not only having, cool things like this, but being able to back that up with, hey, this is the technology I used it with. This is the framework that I use. This is my design strategy. This is why I thought about this. That's the tech part. Project is awesome, but talk about tech. And Kevin, let me say, thank you so much for giving us this link, giving us examples, and everybody has it in the chat room. Definitely check it out. And really, really connect with each other in terms of, if Kevin is pulling things like this, everybody should be making moves like this. And you have a resource and support collectively in this community to be able to have very similar projects and ways of displaying it. So thank you so much, Kevin, for volunteering and letting us see that. And for sure, I hope everybody gets an opportunity to identify projects that they're very much passionate about, and definitely opportunities for the best way for you to display it, because that was really, really cool. So big ups to that, Kevin. Great job. All right. So the next slide is now it's time to get to work. I almost gave you that get to work spiel or speech right when we just, ended chatting up with Kevin. But I do want to just remind you that working on these projects is a reflection of how passionate you are. Even hearing Kevin talk about it, I can hear the passion in his voice, so much so that I want to go read his blog post so I can see how inspectors became great software engineers. And just really just being able to showcase that passion makes me have more interest in what you're talking about in your project, and also just remembering you and interviews or all the names that I have to go through, because it's a crowd of people trying to get in. And we definitely want to make sure that experience that you give them is something that they can remember. So yeah, now let's get to work and work collaboratively in the group. I got it out. All right, so we have a few more minutes left. Yes, we got at least a few more minutes left before we get to the last slide. But this is an opportunity for anyone to ask any questions. I tried this last time where I was like, yo, just throw your question in the chat room, but that didn't work too well. So I did like the idea that if you do have a question, raise your hand, just get on the mic, and whoever opens the mic first gets a question out. But I also want to make sure that if you're not comfortable with that method, definitely put in the chat room, and I'll take a break, and Kevin will read them out loud for us. Thanks a lot, volunteer. So if you are up and have a question, please raise your hand, open up the mic. And if you prefer to drop it in the chat room, please feel free to drop it in the chat room. All right, I see one hand raised. Go ahead and open up your mic and let me stop.
Hi, thank you. First, I want to just say thank you for all the great advice. But I also wanted to ask, you talked a lot about organization and documentation. Is there a guide or rules to that you think are the most important thing for people to follow when they're organizing their projects?
Yeah, so this is going to be something that as you're working in the industry, you'll start to get more used to. It is looking and finding things like style guides or ways of structuring your code base for the beginning of a project.
Mm-hmm.
And those were the things that really just in my initial search for like learning how to structure my code, like don't use this way of doing it, do it this way, or it's like a wiki page that shows you like, hey, this is how we write our wiki pages. There's definitely great articles out there writing really, high and really great README files. I actually was doing some search for this talk, and as soon as I typed it in there, I believe even GitHub had a page or some other resources like writing really good README docs. And in general, those were the tools that I would say would lead you down the way of writing the way that collectively, as you're managing code, is more structured in that way. That also includes file structure too. So if you're creating a Python project, how should that file structure look like? Or any code base, how that structure should look like is more or less style guides that you'll be looking up. Hopefully that answers the question.
Yeah, thank you.
Yellow.
Hey, Bobby. Thanks so much for, giving this presentation. So something you mentioned in the beginning was that our projects should align with our interests and showcase, and the second part, showcase our technical skills. And I feel like right now I'm kind of stuck in the middle where I have some meteor projects that are showcase a lot of good technical skills, but that no longer aligns with my interests. Well, I have smaller projects that do align with my interests. And so I just wanted to know your suggestions on, like, I guess, kind of which one should I highlight or pin? Which one should I put on my resume? Because I really only have like a limited section. Like, should I put my super simple limited like JavaScript projects I'm working on, but they're just not as large in their like technical skills? So
yeah, for sure. And I did want to say that if I'm thinking about this hustle in terms of getting an opportunity to get a job, one of the things that you want to showcase is the skill set that aligns with the position you're applying for. And it really can change which one is your showcase project, but also knowing that if you're in a conversation and they're looking for a project that is like really more in depth than where you're at in your journey of your new showcase project, I'm going to side with the project that I can really talk down to that level that they're looking for. And also making sure that I'm practicing and making the right decision of when to use each. If I'm saying I'm applying for an opportunity as a front-end developer and my showcase project is on AngularJS and JavaScript, but I'm just starting, it's okay for me to be like, hey, I'm making this transition into this journey, showcasing this as one of my projects. But if you want to see how proficient I am, here goes this other project that I work in that was actually in a different code base written in Python, so on and so forth, right? Is not saying that you don't put, don't you remove one of them off, but you kind of highlight which one you want to bring up and based on the position you're applying for. That also applies to your resume. I know you only have a certain amount of space. It's like maybe 2 projects, maybe 3 projects, and I want that to be exactly where, but if it's like maybe 2 projects that are showcasing the skill set now, and then 1 project that really show that beefy, I'm a software engineer and I worked in, this open source repository. Like if you worked on an open source project and you made 1 contribution, that one's definitely on your resume regardless, right? And then the other 2 projects are where you're at. So that's kind of like the way that I would kind of manage which of those projects would apply. But yes, it is definitely tough as you're making that transition and trying to showcase those skill sets. You just want to make sure you have something that you can really talk deep to based on the opportunity that's presented. Does that make sense, Gabby?
Yeah, it does. Thanks.
For sure. All right.
Yeah, so we got 2 questions that popped up in the chat, Bobby.
All right, Kevin, go ahead for it.
So we have the first question from Suko. When is the best time to contribute to open source projects? I just do not feel confident and ready.
Yes, yeah, that's a really good question, and thank you very much for asking that. That was one of the options for this talk today was talking about open source or talking about a showcase project 1. So we're here talking about showcase project, but I guarantee you we will have a conversation about open source because it's something that I definitely want you all to take advantage of if you're feeling comfortable, because definitely it's not just anybody in the group. It's like the world potentially could be in the group. But how do you find the right open source project that you feel comfortable to contribute to? And different things that I look for and projects that I've given mentees advice for to, become a part of that community, and how to introduce yourself and or start taking on tasks. But in general, it is intimidating. It does require you to find something that you're passionate about, because if you think about it, you're most likely in school. You may have a job, some form of fashion, you might get paid or not. You have your schoolwork to deal with. And then that little extra time, that's when you're going to go work on an open source project, right? So it needs to be something that you're passionate about and something that interests you, so that you can make those type of contributions. Because if you don't have that, then you will feel like you're on the outside, and not be able to, make the impact that you want to represent based on your skill set. So it does require some time and effort. And because you asked that question, and I actually see another comment about open source, I'm going to mention that maybe not our next career lab be about open source, but the next one that we have an option to choose, I'm going to highly recommend that. The Career Center is also creating some materials in terms of resources, how to choose an open source project, and almost like a Notion wiki page specifically around open source. So definitely keep an eye out for that. But definitely feel free to get some time on my calendar so we can talk some more if you have more interest in me diving more deeper. But definitely a topic that we'll be covering in the near future. All right. Thank you so much.
Yes. And then the second question that popped up was how to add more statistics for the description of a project in a resume. If this is just a course project currently, which couldn't provide how many users to use it or how much performance has been improved.
Yeah. So that's definitely so one of the things that we teach in resume building and talking about your project is being able to correlate that back to some business impact, either financially, which is great. Hey, I worked on this project and we saved the company this amount of money, or I did this work and we were able to create this amount of revenue. But also having a project that reflects to actual data changing in the environment. And what I'm more or less observing from this this question here is that there may be some data that you cannot say because it's a school project or a course project, or a way that you're looking for those type of data points to describe your showcase project. And definitely let me know if I'm not clear on the question. But there are other ways for you to highlight the things in your project that aren't specifically around those specific metrics and those data points. For me, talking about the user experience and the decision on certain technology decisions, like, hey, example, this project required me to have persistent storage. This project required me to have a way to store persistent data. Rather than using a local database running MySQL, I decided to use an API that's available that does XYZ. That right there, describing that inside of a project description really just gives me an insights into the challenge you had from, hey, I needed to store it locally in some type of database. You described what it was. And there was a decision point that I'd rather go use an API externally. And that's why I decided to do XYZ. I mean, you're not really highlighting specifically about the cost benefits and things like that, but you're still highlighting some of the things that are really important about the project and definitely showcases those skill sets. So hopefully that gives you some opinions on how I feel that you could still describe great things about your passionate project or your showcase project. But yes, when we teach, we definitely want you to find ways to connect to it. And I would say projects that you work on as an intern, excuse me, or projects that you worked on at a company, you definitely want to make those connections. So showcase projects may not fit in that bucket. Hopefully I answer your question. All right, Kevin.
That's very helpful. Thank you.
Definitely.
I think that's it for questions, but I actually have one as well, in terms of like performance. So I'm in the process of moving like my applications to a single like virtual machine and then running it behind a reverse proxy. Um, how do I, so this may be like a more in-depth question, but how would I test my infrastructure? Like, how would I like just throw in a bunch of requests at my domain and see how many that can handle, if I need to know if I need to scale?
Yeah. So Kevin's asking for an advanced question today. If anybody didn't know, and I'm gonna start charging him for the answers that I'm gonna give.
Yeah, they're all Docker too, so it's all Dockerized. So like, I
No,
didn't.
yeah, that's cool. No worries. I got you. So, so one skill set that I bring to the table, and thank you for asking these type of questions because I love talking about this stuff too. So, one skill set that I bring to the table on the systems engineering side is building large scale systems to be able to manage load when you're building applications or web applications, or in the sense we're just going to call it an API. So what Kevin is describing to me is that, hey, I built this API out in AWS with all their services, and now I'm trying to bring this onto some virtual machine that I'm going to manage. And on that virtual machine, I'm going to run Docker containers of the application that I want to host. Now, if you're not familiar with the stuff that I'm talking about, this is the other side of engineering that is really interesting and something that you can really develop a really cool insights into how all of this stuff work. If you're mostly on the development side in terms of just writing code, what I'm talking about is stuff that happens behind it. So if Kevin, you mentioned Docker container, right? So you're running some containers, right? So you're running a few instances of your containers, right? How many instances are you running?
I'm just running 2 each. I'm not really expecting too much traffic.
Perfect, perfect. And you said that you're using a reverse proxy and not a load balancer. Is that correct?
Right. Yeah, I just have traffic running, which has like some Nginx properties. I kind of moved away from Nginx because I didn't want to keep manually configuring the domains.
For sure, for sure. But reverse proxy and load balancing are just are providing the services, the same services in different ways. Load balancers, if you're not familiar with, are really at the networking layer. It says, hey, when this network package come here to this IP address, instead of sending it directly to that computer, we could send it to maybe that computer over there. A new package come in, actually, I'm going to send it to that computer. And then the load balancer basically is balancing the loads across multiple instances of your application. The reverse proxy is a little different. The reverse proxy says, based on your URL, you tell me, or I tell you where to send the traffic. So you say, hey, this URL, send the traffic to that instance of your application or send the traffic to the other instance of the application. Now, that's load balancing reverse proxy. Now, on the front end to that is an application or a client. A client is connecting to it via web or something like an iOS or Android, but it's a client that's connecting to it. Now, how do you test your performance based on how the infrastructure is designed? Is that you have to simulate clients connecting. So there are services out there that you can register for. And it's almost one of those services, I don't know the name off the top of my head, but it's almost one of the services that's always pinging your website to make sure that the website is always up. They also offer things where you can increase loads and run like load testing. So you say, hey, I want to send 500 connections to this computer in 1 second and see what happens to the infrastructure. Was I able to accept all 500 connections, or did I only take 200 of them and I fell over, right? That's how you test the infrastructure. Then when you actually get to the real big leagues, right, is that you actually have these clients all over the world. So you know how we have clouds everywhere. What you'll do is a client in Asia, you'll run a client in the US, you'll run it in the East Coast, West Coast, and then you start sending all those traffics to that server or to that endpoint or to that reverse proxy. Can I take all this connection? Oh, that's how you actually start to grow your environment. Because then it's like, instead of 2 instances, I need 200 instances. Instead of 200 instances, I need 2,000 instances. That's what that side of systems engineering and load management comes into play. So I know that was a little advanced course. Hopefully that gives you all some ideas of, engineering and what we think about. But that's how it all starts off with, is going from developing things out in AWS, saying, hey, I need to bring it in-house. How do I still create that redundancy and reliability that my service provides? So I really enjoyed that question. Thank you very much for asking, Kevin. And we are close to the end of our conversation. So those techie talks like that, we can offer those also here in the Career Lab, where you want to talk tech and really dive deeper. I mean, we didn't really get to do like an architectural diagram, but I could have been able to draw it out so that you can have the visuals behind it too. Maybe the next time we throw a survey out there, remember this is something that maybe you all want to talk about and stuff like that, so we can bring it to light. But let me bring back up the slides because I don't think I have much left. Ah, yes, we was looking at. Nope, that was it. That's all we are. So thank you so much for coming through and hanging out with me. We are a little early, so I will be hanging out just for a little bit more, jamming to a little bit of music, maybe 5 minutes after. So if you want to hang out and chat some more. But I want to say thank you all so much for coming to the Career Lab that we had today. And I hope that you finding a showcase projects get you exactly where you're going, because I can see it already. All of you are going to be having different conversations in the near future. And as I tell a lot of you, if you've met me already, that means you're heading in the right direction. Just keep pushing, keep going. I promise you, you'll be exactly where you want to be. So thank you so much. Y'all have a great evening. Where's my music at, though?
Thank you so much, Bobby.
So Bobby, what do you think of ChatGPT?
What do I think about ChatGPT? Oh man. I actually low-key, so when I decided to part ways with Twitter, one of my friends works over there at OpenAI, threw my name in the hat. And all of a sudden I was having some conversations with the recruiting team over there at one time. But this is before they released anything, and I didn't know this was what was coming. So I think I may have missed the plug that one. But in terms of the product, in terms of AI, in terms of where we're about to go,
I'm excited.
it's a game changer. It's actually, you know what? Let me also, before I get real deep, stop the recording. Thank you for asking that questions. Let me stop the recording.